Hey, we're live. Welcome back. I'm Jack Gately and broadcasting to you from our office in beautiful Plymouth. Thank you so much for coming. Did one of these yesterday. I thought it went well. So today I thought I'd do another like headline live stream. So yeah, give it a try. Why not? Thank you for joining us or joining me, I should say. Didn't get a lot of viewers yesterday, but that's not what I was really looking for. I was looking to kind of, can I do this? So I'm going to experiment on you again, apparently, and you can either choose to join us or not. Let's dive into the news of the day. And let's see, click here or there. There we go. So we start with a very awful story out of Connecticut. You've probably heard about this in the morning news. In Bristol, Connecticut, home of ESPN, two officers fatally shot, one injured, suspect dead in ambush after fake domestic violence call in Connecticut. So apparently the suspect called the police, 911, asked for assistance, domestic violence call, the most dangerous type of call that police officers face, from what I understand. And immediately upon their arrival, the suspect opened fire. And two officers are deceased. The suspect is deceased. There's a third officer who's critically injured, not sure what his current status is. One of these officers is a father of two with the baby on the way. Awful, horrific story out of Connecticut. I'm sure they'll have additional updates on the afternoon news as as information develops, especially relative to the condition of the third officer. Amazing what these police officers do for us every day that we don't even think about. And what type of horrific, sick person do you have to be to commit such a crime? It's one thing to commit suicide by cop. That's an awful thing. But why do you have to take them down with you? Just horrific, absolutely horrific. All right, let's move on to inflation. Inflation came in hotter than expected. So the expectation was 8.1% year over year for the headline number. It actually came in at 8.2. Last month it was 8.3. So effectively, inflation remains at a little bit higher than 8%. Year over year. Excuse me. The big number here is the inflation number excluding food and energy, And that came up again hot. In other words, above expectations at 0.6%, and then worse, 6.6% year over year. So this is the highest year over year number for core inflation, which excludes food and energy, as if you don't pay for those, right? Excluding food and energy in 40 years, since 1982. I think in 1982, core inflation, which once again, I'm just going to say it's because it gets confusing, excludes food and energy. Core inflation, I think in that year hit like 9% or something like that. So we're not quite there, thank God. But 6.6 year over year for core inflation. That really hurts. I was just talking to Beth yesterday. She went to the market basket and she came home and she just last night and in the kitchen, she said, wow, food prices have gone up. Food prices have gone up. And I mean, she really noticed that with her trip to the market. But everyone's been noticing that as the whole year has gone by, right? It's really quite alarming. I want to show you this very important chart that I got over here at zerohedge.com. And it shows that sadly, real wages. Now, the Biden administration says wages are up. Wages are up. But real wages adjusted for inflation are actually now down for the 18th month in a row. You can almost look at this chart, and literally by the time Biden raises his hand to take the oath of office, real wages have declined every single month. If I'm looking at this chart right, basically every single month of his administration. And again, that's because even though your wages might be going up, they're getting eaten away by the cost or by the impact of inflation. So real wages are actually down. Uh, in effect, we all know it. I mean, we can all say it. We need more money to. We're just treading water, and actually, a lot of people are actually not treading water. They're losing ground, right? Losing ground. Inflation's an awful thing. When I was a kid, I'm old enough to remember the 70s and the early 80s when my parents were paying mortgage rates of 17, 18, 19, maybe your parents were too. It's an incredibly demoralizing social impact inflation is. I was just reading in Lebanon, they have massive inflation. It's like 95% in the last several years. Effectively, the Lebanese lira has no value. Effectively, it's horrific. And if you've seen some of the protests over there with the banking that they've had, it's just absolutely amazing. All right, we have some fake news out of the border. I read in this story at borderreport.com, DHS sending Venezuelans back to Mexico who cross illegally. Yeah, I'm not buying this story. They say this is a joint effort with Mexico, and they're also saying there's a new process for Venezuelans to qualify to enter the U.S. legally. And they're saying that DHS is going to send these Mexicans who come in illegally, they're going to send them back to Mexico, but only if Mexico accepts the Venezuelans, which I'm just going to guess they're not going to do that. Right. So I'm calling fake news on this story out of Border Report. This is like a spin that we had a couple of months ago over the summertime where the Biden administration said they're going to build the border wall in Arizona. We're going to build more of it. That was literally just spin to provide political cover for people running for office, Democrats running for office in Arizona. And I think this is the exact same thing. Mayorkas is out. These actions make it clear that there's a lawfully orderly way for Venezuelans to enter the United States. And the reason why they're talking about Venezuelans so much is because there are so many economic migrants from Venezuela fleeing into the United States because they're fleeing the far left politics of Venezuela. You know, sooner enough, because of inflation, you run out of other people's money in a socialist country. Hint, hint. Also, in the border report, so to speak, El Paso is now going to be receiving $2 million from the federal government for the handling of illegal immigrants in El Paso. They're looking for another $6 million, and they are expecting 60,000 illegal immigrants to come into El Paso in this month of October alone. I know for those of you who live in beautiful Plymouth like I do, that's almost 10% of our townwide population. Call it 9% of our townwide population. But the cartels control the border, and I'm not going to show you the incredibly graphic picture of this story. But this happened in a border town directly across from Texas, Roma, Texas. Roma, Texas is halfway between Laredo and McAllen. Graphic Mexican cartel gunmen dumped 4 human heads near Texas border town. And I'm not going to show you that picture because that is not a family-friendly photo. It is in this story if you want to get it over at Border Report. They were in this cooler. I'm old-fashioned. I call it an ice chest. But they were in this cooler, and this is just a gang war, just a cartel war between one cartel and the other. It continues, never stops. It's horrific. And because of our current border policy, it's an open border. We have an open border with Mexico. There's a lot of money to be made by smuggling people over, smuggling drugs over, and this is some of the consequence of that. Talking about drugs, border officers in Texas find liquid meth in condoms hidden in pumpkins. So they found 4 pumpkins, and in those 4 pumpkins was $400,000 of liquid meth in only 4 pumpkins. And you can imagine how just so much more is actually detected in any given day, or undetected, I should say, in any given day. Just, you can't make this stuff up. What we are doing here, what the Biden administration is doing here, by having an open border, not only do we have the gang war on the Mexican side, the massive financial cost of illegal immigrants and lower wages and welfare costs for taxpaying Americans, but you also have drugs coming over that are actually literally killing our own kids. Biden administration doesn't do a thing. So I had some fun watching this video from the Bronx, and our friend AOC, she had a town hall like Congress members do across the country. And usually, you know, most of the time you have friendly people show up at the town halls. You might remember the town halls back, I don't know, a good decade ago, where the Tea Party movement started, when Congress members came back to their districts and they were met with angry people about the healthcare situation. Well, in the Bronx, they were concerned about the fact that basically AOC has become, and we'll try to go full screen here on this, it's got 3 million, this one's got 3 million views. I'm sure there's more views. AOC has basically become part of the Democratic establishment, and she came in to change things, theoretically, but now she's part of the establishment pro-war / neocon swamp. So here's an interesting clip from her own town hall in the Bronx. Just let it load there for a quick second. Oh, come on. Our first technical difficulty. Maybe if it's not full screen, it will load. Oh, it's not loading. Oh, tremendously disappointing. Maybe we need to refresh the page. Well, let's see. Maybe the tweet has been deleted and therefore the it won't work now. I don't know. Trust me, she got demolished by her own town hall attendees, basically calling her out for being in favor of the war in Ukraine. If you're not watching, there is an established Washington alliance between the typically conservative Republican neocons and the establishment Democrats, who are absolutely pushing us to a war, an outright war with Russia. Let me just ask you a quick question. Who do you think wins a war between the United States and Russia? The answer is China. All right, Kanye. Kanye West said some really ugly things the other day. He said a lot of things that I agree with and a lot of things that I disagree with. But apparently he has annoyed JP Morgan Chase. Some of the comments that he made were relative to Jews in the financial industry, which I would totally say totally inappropriate comments, disgusting comments that he made relative to Jews in the financial industry. And that has gotten him debanked by JP Morgan. So apparently Kanye has his sneaker money from, how do you say it? Yeezy, the sneaker company, or the shoe company, footwear. He has his billions there at JP Morgan, but he has to actually debank himself from there by November 21st. This is most likely due to the comments he's made in the past week or so. You might also know that he had the White Lives Matter shirt that he wore with Candace Owens to an event. And JP Morgan is owned in part by BlackRock, which is pushing ESG woke politics into corporate America. That does not excuse his comments relative to Jews in the financial industry, which are totally inappropriate and wrong. But nonetheless, he is out of JP Morgan by the end of next month, totally gone. Which reminds me of a story that just happened last week, which was when PayPal released these new terms of service, which they quickly retracted, saying that it will fine users $2,500 for misinformation. So this kind of expands things a little bit in the bigger picture. There was also a story just today where this Twitter account, which I don't follow, I hardly ever use Twitter anymore, but this Twitter account called Cat Turd, which I have heard of. It's a conservative Twitter account. They have a podcast, and their Bank of America account has been debanked from Bank of America because of things they've said. So it raises the much bigger question of what are you allowed to say and still have a bank account? A bank account, in my opinion, is much more like a public accommodation, like a taxi, as opposed to an optional feature of life like a wedding cake. I appreciate and recognize the importance of the freedom of association, to be able to do business with whom you want to do business with, to have a parade and be able to invite people to that parade who you want to have in your parade, and not to be forced to take somebody that you don't want to. This is called the freedom of association. But banking, especially since it's underwritten in a way by the federal government with the FDIC insurance, blah, 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 that it's like a public accommodation. And so at what point are we saying to people, hey, if you say something that the bank doesn't like, we're going to yank your account? I mean, where does Kanye go? If JP Morgan doesn't want them, that's kind of like the peak of banking. Do you think Rockland Trust is going to take them if JP Morgan doesn't want them? I don't know. But it does raise a question of your ability to do business, to make an economic living. Not that we're worried about Kanye, but to make a living if you can't bank, which has been a huge issue for lower class folks across the country. And I guess it's got to be a concern for people who say things that are against the official narrative or the current thing. Hey, I'm John F. Gately. You can call me Jack. I'm broadcasting to you from beautiful Plymouth, America's hometown, Massachusetts, behind enemy lines. Have a great day.